if we could do some brief introductions. I guess we could do that now.
All right.
So if we just want to start with Kabir, maybe.
So
Okay.
my name is Kabir Syed. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Pan-African Studies at Kent State, and the very proud faculty advisor of the Kent chapter of Students for a Democratic Society. And I'm super glad to be working with them after 51 years on the Kent's campus. I'm coming back.
My name is Candy, and I used to be known in Kent as Candy Erickson. I was married to Rick Erickson. My name is Carolyn Harper Knox, and everybody calls me Candy. I'm retired faculty from the University of Oregon. I have a master's degree in computer science and a PhD in technology and learning. I taught freshman English at Kent when I was in SDS, and I helped start SDS. And as I was telling Colt yesterday, I helped to start the Kent Community Project, which ended up now being the Kent Natural Food Store. So that's me.
Thanks, Candy. And you guys, you and Rick, just for information's sake, lived in the house on Columbus Street.
DePister, yeah. It's called the Haunted House. People
affectionately known as the Haunted House.
Exactly. We were the people who moved into the Haunted House. Yep. And you know, somebody asked, or I guess it was on one of the questions that Colin sent, was how did you get SDS going? You know, how did people join? And it wasn't really, I was thinking about the Haunted House, and I was thinking about the early days, and really it was just a bunch of friends. It just started as a bunch of friends getting together, talking about war, racism, whatever it was. And the Haunted House figured prominently along with other houses that in Kent where people got together sort of communally.
Okay, I'm back, folks, I think.
All right, the perfect transition. Colin, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is Colin Nyberger. I was a member of Kent SDS for all of the 7 months that I actually attended Kent State University. I arrived in the fall of 1968 as a transfer student, and I was escorted off of campus and banned from campus in April of 1969. But I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and I've been a lifelong activist for peace and justice.
Thanks, Colin. So, Colt, did you want to introduce yourself? I think we've got Tayjua and Patrick have joined us as well, although they need to unmute their microphones.
Could we actually start with Patrick and then come back to me? People are having a hard time finding the video, apparently.
Okay, sounds good.
Hello, can everyone hear me fine?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hello, Patrick.
Cool, my name is Patrick Ferguson. I am the 2019-2020 Black United Students President. I'm a senior double major in sociology and psychology. And yeah, it's really good to be here. Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, you too.
Tayjua, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I can go. So, hey everyone, my name is Tayjua Hines. I am the 2019-2020 student relations director and academic affairs director of Black United Students. And then I am the incoming president for 2020-2021.
Congratulations, and we're so glad.
And I am a junior and I major in Pan-African Studies.
All right, sounds good. And Colt, are you still working?
I'm good, I think.
Okay.
So yes, I am Colt Hutchinson. I am the current SDS chair at Kent State University. Yeah, that's me.
And a great saxophone player, I might add.
Oh, thank you.
Just to say. So we're gonna keep it pretty casual today, folks, and I have a number of questions, and I'm gonna ask Colt if are people, just for a question for clarification, so people from outside participants and observers, are they going to be asking questions on the Facebook page itself?
Yes, I'm hoping that we can save that to the end of the discussion, and then if we have a little time, people can type comments out to the Facebook.
Questions out. Okay, sounds good. Then I have a list of questions as well, but we'll just try and keep it as informal as possible. And I really was hoping that you guys would be able to engage in quite a bit of conversation as well. So I think one of the things that that we were really hoping to look at today was to look at the history of SDS from that period of time in the late 60s, but also to look at the issues that SDS and Black United students are facing today, and to sort of have a conversation between the generations and look at some of the things that you guys might have as advice for the students of today, and some of the challenges that the students of today are facing that may be a little bit different from that of you folks in the late 60s. So I was going to start off with a couple of questions for Candy and Colin. And the first one was that SDS was often labeled as a radical group. Do you still consider yourselves radicals after all these years? And has your political outlook changed?
Do you want to take that first, Candy?
Sure. I mean, I don't see how it could possibly stop being the foundation that was laid in the 60s. That just doesn't go away. It just grows and grows and grows and grows. It changes. I mean, it does. It's informed by new things. The argument that, you know, this like clash of points of view between power over people, power over the environment, power over period, and people who are more into power with, you know, in the collaborative sense of collaborating with people and collaborating with nature, that sort of thing. That argument is just always going on. It's got these two things, but the issues change and the circumstances change, and the kind of thing you see on the news, that changes. And so you, for right now, I live in Oregon. Probably there's two major issues here. One is the environment, the other is immigration and how we're treating immigrants. And so right now, that's kind of where I'm focused, is thinking about that. Back in Kent and in Ohio, and of course, I mean, there was a war, but you couldn't separate the war from racism. You couldn't separate racism really for anything. You know, it was all tied together, and still it is all tied together around racism, imperialism, capitalism. I mean, that analysis is foundational, and it just keeps informing everything that I see and try to understand now. That's how it goes. I mean, I just
taken to heart and understood it, but it's something that's really true. There's a privilege with the white skin that exists, and that we need to be able to fight white supremacy at all times, not only outside of ourselves, but it was something to struggle inside of ourselves too. It was a real challenging learning process. And I do remember the day, just really quickly, I remember the day that the Black United students walked off of campus. It had a huge impact on me. It was a silent, huge recognition of a lot of what was going on. And it just, so anyway, that
Yeah.
I've gone on too long, I'm sorry.
No, it's great.
But can I just add one thing?
Sure,
I'm not going to
Candy.
talk too much, I promise. But just I just want to underscore what Colin was saying about discovering and learning and trying to deal with our own racism. That fact that we're, as white people raised in this country, have this, even though we don't consciously think we do, there's this subtle thing that's going on. It's the same as sexism, male chauvinism, that we were also trying to understand and confront. But like Colin said, not just in the others, not just in those people outside, the people we called pigs, but in ourselves, our own male chauvinism, even as a woman, and our own racism.
Yeah.
That, I mean, exploring that and dealing with each other in that way with love, but with strength, so that there was change. That was so powerful for us.
Yeah. I mean, those are both such great answers, and exactly what I think we were trying to get to. Looking at the fact that there are these strains and these issues that seem to be pretty consistent in American society, fighting war, fighting imperialism, fighting racism, which are sort of at the core, in many ways, of our history, unfortunately. The next question that I had was if you guys could talk about how SDS came to exist on the Kent State campus, and share, Colin, you shared a little bit of your experiences in terms of early activism. But if you could talk about the origins of SDS, it's one of those things that really doesn't get dealt with in the history a lot.
I went and I called Howie Emmer up to talk about this, because he was one of the people, along with a few other people from the Kent Committee to End the War in Vietnam, that in the spring of 1968 actually got together and formed the Students for Democratic Society on the Kent's campus. And it sprung forth because of the rebellion that had happened and the strike at Columbia University, where in Columbia, at the Columbia University, the students of color, the Black students, and the SDS chapter joined together to fight not just war, but racism as well. And that was something that became part of, started to build the bigger picture. And so Howie and a few other people decided to start the SDS chapter at that point.
And they occupied Columbia for the administration building there for quite a few days, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
They
occupied,
did. They occupied quite a number of buildings. And actually, it was interesting that, because I went back and read about it just a little bit, they occupied a lot of buildings. One of the issues was, not just the complicity with the university, which Kent was and probably still is with war. And that was something that the SDS chapter was focusing in on, but the African American students were also bringing up the issue about a gym that was being built just on the borders of Harlem that was going to be a segregated gym, and it was actually impeding on the community. And so even when the takeover happened, the students, the African American students, actually took over a building by themselves and actually asked the white students to leave. Mm-hmm. And the white students left, and everybody was still united, but it was a powerful statement.
Yeah,
that people had to deal with, that the people of color wanted to speak directly about what they felt was important and bring the issue to the forefront.
Yeah. So Candy, you and Rick were a little bit older than Howie and Colin. How did you guys get involved in the formation of SDS on campus, and what was your role?
Well, Howie and I were friends, basically, and we were both English majors. I was taking graduate classes in English, and Rick and I moved into a house on Main Street, and Howie lived on in Lilac Gardens. You know where Lilac Gardens is? Well, Rick we lived a couple of blocks away from Howie. So, and Rick would work nights. So Howie would come over nighttime, bring his puppy over. I had a cat, he had a puppy, and we'd talk poetry and literature and politics. I mean, it was all part of everything. And then Howie and I and Ruth and Jack, Howie's parents, went to the March on the Pentagon together. And when I came back, I mean, there just the brutality there and the really amazing beauty of the people that I met there who were protesting. It was just an eye opener. It was a life changer. And to come back and read the newspapers and see how they distorted it. I mean, it was all about bras on the grass and marijuana and all this stuff.
And
no
whether or not it levitated.
Yeah, I mean, it just trivialized everything, and people were beat up. I mean, Howie and I were hiding in the dark to get to the drugstore to bring back bandages and things for people on the Pentagon porch. And, you know, 6 bayonets, soldiers with 6 bayonets were pushing people around. None of that was being told in the newspapers. And I swear to you, I would burst into tears. I don't know, I was young, what can I say? Every time I would talk to friends about it, I would just start to cry. And it happened again and again. I mean, probably 5 or 6 times at different
Chicago,
talking to people. No, I mean, just the Pentagon, just this conversation about what is going on here. And then Howie decided to move in with me and Rick, and his girlfriend and Rick and I lived together in the haunted house. And it just, I mean, yeah, we started to go to meetings with people from SDS, national, regional travelers, which I hear you don't have anymore, but it was wonderful. Bill Ayers, Mark Rudd, Bernadine Dorn, all stayed at our house. Terry Robbins lived with us finally. He just moved in with us. Yeah.
And that was part of the ERAP program as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, it started as a bunch of friends, really. It started as a group of people who would meet and talk in various ways, parties, houses.
And you guys started off with pretty small numbers too, but you grew pretty quickly as a group. Can you talk about that? Can you both talk about how that that movement started off as sort of a spark, but really grew into a pretty strong flame?
Colin, do you want to talk?
Well, okay. I think that one of the successful strategies that Kent SDS had is that we would do education, but we'd also do actions as well at the same time around the issues that we were talking about. So at the same time, we talk about how we felt elections were a no-win situation. We actually carried a coffin and buried the election, buried the elections. We went to dormitories all the time and had dorm wraps. We had tables that we took care of where people came. A lot of us disrupted classes. You can ask the professors there. I don't think they have. Every time something would be brought up, I would bring up what was going on the campus and what I thought was important. And I know I wasn't the only one. And I think also there was a growth process that was going on. The more that people came to the meetings, at the meetings, we actually talk about issues, read from different magazines. One was The Guardian. but there'd be a whole evolutionary process that was happening amongst all the people that were there. And because we all didn't come from the same place. I mean, no one ever starts from the same place. I was telling Colt, the best man at my wife's and my wedding, voted for Richard Nixon and ended up a community activist and a radical organizer with me. But it was important. We have to learn how to talk with people. And that's one of the things that was happening. We were learning how to talk about the issues. And the more that we learned to talk about the issues, the more we could bring more people in. And of course, there was what was going on. We dropped more bombs on Vietnam than were ever dropped in all of World War II in Germany. I mean, try to even fathom that. We defoliated their forests with Agent Orange. We sent our soldiers there under the guise of fighting an enemy, but the truth is it was a liberation movement that had been going on forever and ever and ever. And they had already defeated the French and everybody else that had ever come to their countries. And so that was going on. At the same time, all the different things that were happening in the people of color communities was happening all throughout, it wasn't just in Oakland, California that the police were repressing community. In Cleveland, Ohio, in Akron locally, people were, there was the whole issue of Fred Ahmad Evans that existed. So those things that were being factored in, as well as there was an urgency, and that urgency helped us grow. It helped us learn how to reach out to people, and other people were feeling it. It's when people can actually grasp where they are, like, wait, they're talking about this and I understand what you're saying. So I feel like
there's a couple of things I'd like to add on to what you said,
Please.
Colin. Like I said, there were regional travelers, so there were always a lot of national level folks who were coming, and we could have, like, the Berrigan brothers came, and people wanted to see and talk to the Berrigan brothers. We had movies that came out of New York City. What was that called? The one movie was the Up Against the Wall Motherfuckers, but
Panther.
there were all sorts of movies from the Vietnamese, movies of Vietnamese people planting rice, and all of a sudden you'd see this little dot far off in the sky, and it would just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they'd drop their tools and they'd just pick up guns and shoot at this plane that was coming to bomb them in the sky. And it was so real. It was just so made the war so real that these are peasants and we are that plane, and things like that. In addition to, I think I was always at the rap sessions, or often at rap sessions. And I think that the thing about something that I often said in rap sessions was, people would ask, how do you join SDS? And I would say, you're not going to have to sign anything. You're not going to get a card. I don't know how many people I'm calling. Did you have an SDS card? I didn't have an SDS card. I mean, we didn't join SDS. You became SDS. You thought like SDS. And especially when Colin was talking about, we learned to talk about these issues, we modeled how to talk about these issues to all these other people. We helped by being the voices that people were hearing and using the words that we were using. We helped people give voice to their own feelings and understandings in a way that they never had before.
And we were fortunate to have really incredible teachers, not only with the regional travelers, which was, I mean, really Bernadine and Terry and Bill and Jim Mellon and
Mark Rudd.
Mark Rudd. And then we had all these, I mean, there was a wealth of incredibleness inside the chapter itself of people who already existed and had a consciousness. But we had the leadership also of the Black Panther Party. that was really raising issues, not just, in the news, they tried to make it seem like the Panthers were all about guns, but the Panthers were about protecting people. But they had all these social programs, and they were trying to, the 10-point program, they were trying to build a better world. It was a model for us to watch and learn from. And there were so many organizations that sprung at that time.
Just to interject here, somebody had a question about what a rap session was.
Rap session, you just go into the dorms in their common room, and somebody would start just talking about the war or racism or whatever it was that was an issue of the day. We'd bring books, we'd bring pamphlets, set up a table, but there'd be lots of people, and really people were hanging off the rafters. People would come in great numbers, and they'd get to ask questions and talk and say what they wanted to say, and we'd just rap. We'd rap back and forth. Rap session. Sometimes Al Diamondstein would come and play the piano. I mean, they were just informal gatherings.
Did you have a vision of Candy and Howie and Rick and I all doing rapping?
That might have happened. We might have. I remember. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Candy. Go ahead.
No, I could go on with memories. You ask questions and it'll all come out.
Okay, so I'm gonna move you guys into the present a little bit. I'm not sure if you're aware, but a coalition of student organizations now, including Black United Students and SDS, have recently submitted a list of 4 demands to the university. What advice would you share with them to achieve their demands? And do you know about the demands as well?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, and I think I'm not sure achieving the demands is what I would focus on. I think getting everybody in Kent, all the workers, students, people in Kent, and Kent State University writ large, I mean, really, it's the whole state of Ohio, to understand the issues that you're dealing with there. Those are critical issues, and they affect those people in Ohio, the working classes, the student folks. You're talking about this syndicate, this network of mega corporations, law enforcement, and military. And a minimum wage that's ridiculous. Minimum wage is supposed to be to achieve a living wage, Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is foundational, and we need, in this particular way of economics that we have, you need, something to trade. You need ways to get stuff, and you need the ability to have a satisfactory, good life with the money that you get. That's what that minimum wage is supposed to be all about, and that's ridiculous. And this Aramark group, which is, on one hand law enforcement, the other hand absolutely an environmental degradation. I mean, just a catastrophe, the kind of food and the sort of outsourcing of everything, and the way that everything that has to do with this Aramark pushes all the buttons. It pushes all the buttons. I would like to know how many students at Kent State, graduate students, undergraduate students, and all of the satellite schools, how many of those kids are getting food stamps? How many of those kids are on welfare? How many of those people have children to support? And they're getting what, $7.25 an hour or something ridiculous like that? That's, you can't, no, I don't know what to say about it. It's just like, no. How many of those people are people of color? How many of those people, are women? How many of those people are living? That's poverty. The minimum wage shouldn't be like measured by, oh, did we get you up to the poverty level? No, the minimum wage should be way above poverty level. That should be, yeah, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's where it should be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great demand.
Yeah, I think they're great. I think they're great demands also. And of course, here we are, you know, still talking about, you know, the war machine on campus.
Exactly.
And why the war machine, why the university still is complicit with the war machine, and why that is allowed to go on. I mean, this is an issue that was raised back when we were at Kent. So we're talking 51, 52 years ago, we're talking about these issues. And 51 and 52 years ago, here we are still talking about these issues as if, and I know Colt was telling us the other day there was some sort of ruling or discussion about if it's only fair that ROTC has a chance to be on campus. No, it's not fair. It's not fair that the war machine is allowed to get one dime and that anybody in campus is being encouraged to join. I mean, look, I don't want the ROTC students to join ROTC. I mean, so we actually have to speak to them too. Why? What is it that they're going to do? And in terms of what is it that you can do? I was reading this incredible quote today from Malcolm, something like, if you take the I from illness and put a W there, it becomes wellness and it becomes inclusive.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to, you all have to decide. I think it's really important. You see what we did. You see some of the things that we did that didn't work. And it's important to look back and see what we did that was good. And it's good to look back and see some of the things that we did that didn't work. And engage yourself and try to, as Candy said, educate and educate and educate, but continue to take actions around that education. Continue to take actions, because actions draw attention. Actions draw attention. Right. Talking about something, and that's the thing. That's what we learned back then. You can talk until you're blue in the face, but unless you take an action, then it draws the attention to people and it draws the issue to it. So when you can put those two things together in the best way that you can, and I have a lot of faith. I have a lot of faith. I do. I have so much faith in the new generation of people. I think that there's an amazing amount of activism. I know even here in Asheville, North Carolina, there's an amazing coalition of people that do things around war and racism and poverty and immigration. There's a real wealth of new voices that are being heard. And I think the same hearts that I think each person has the same heart when they hear the truth about something. For the most part, it's going to ring true. Not 100% for everybody, but more often than not.
Right on.
All power to people. That's right.
All right. Just to keep it moving until we get other folks in. We're about 50. We're 50 years from May 4th. Do you think that young people still face the same issues, or do you think that things have changed substantively since your work?
Well, you know, the Greta Thunberg environmentalism is something that people really have to help people understand how it fits in with everything else, with racism, capitalism, et cetera, et cetera. And we did deal with environmentalism back in the 60s, but now I think that people are out here anyway, are basically saying if there's no world, you know, if there's not a living situation for human beings, then that's it. We have to be sure that there's going to be a living, you know, that the world is going to be supported in its system. So I think the environmental movement is kind of moved up in our face, but of course all the other things are still there. Of course they are.
Yeah,
they are.
I'm sorry for interrupting there, Ken.
No.
I'd agree. We we, not just all of us that are on this call and everybody who's listening, it's a we. We are faced with the same challenges. There is still a world at war against every aspect of humanity that exists. And I know that sounds really drastic, but it's so true. I mean, here we are facing a pandemic, which it's an important thing to look at, you know? I mean, a lot of people are dying. More people have died now from this pandemic in the United States than servicemen died, US servicemen died in Vietnam. And this just happened in a couple of months. And we were in Vietnam for so many years. But the thing is that at the same time, there's the administration trying to talk about doing an invasion into Venezuela and trying to support the Pentagon and giving more and more money to the war machine. There's every day you turn on the news, and you all have an advantage. We didn't have social media, so we couldn't see things as fast. And that is one dynamic that I think is really important, because when a policeman turns and beats somebody or shoots somebody, there are people there that can snap a picture of it and send a video of it out right away, and it goes all around. But why is that still happening? Why are policemen still being trained to protect property versus the lives of people? And why are they doing that? Why, like, how can it be that all these armed people took over the State House in Michigan the other day with masks on? I mean, can you imagine? I mean, when the Panthers went to Sacramento, and I think it was in '67, and they went and they took over the State House, which was a very dramatic action. Very dramatic action. The Mulford Act happened right away, which started outlawing people being able to carry guns into places. And the National Rifle Association, the same people that are clapping their hands right now, came out against gun control.
That's right. When black people carry guns, that's what always happens, right?
Yeah, you can imagine what would have happened if people of color had gone into the State House. The police would not have been standing idly by. And there's the issue. It's not that some people who are police people aren't good people and don't have good souls and don't have good intent. It's not true. I was actually raised in a neighborhood with the Baltimore County Police and the Maryland State Troopers. So I know there were good people that existed, but it's what they stand for, like that they allowed these people, that they allowed them to just do whatever they wanted to do. There would have been no way that they would have been met with such brutality. And that's just, I think these are that and the environment and everything. I mean, that we're not actually, in the environment, now that we're not driving our cars, I don't know about you, but I'm getting a 100 weeks to the gallon now. Finally, I'm getting my money's worth.
Yeah.
Look at the effect it's had on the environment around the world.
Yeah.
In places around the world
Yeah.
where people couldn't even see inside their cities anymore.
Yeah.
Because the nature of industrialism, because of profit motive that will just pollute a whole community. People are actually, I know, Kabir, your family's from India. They can actually see the Himalayas now.
Yeah. My mom was talking about, she's in India now, and she was talking about how much cleaner the streets are, and how she can see the stars, and that she wasn't able to do that because of pollution. All right, I'm gonna wrap up. I'm gonna wrap up with questions for you guys and move on to Colton and Patrick. But the last question that I'm gonna ask is about the recent article that came out in The Nation magazine, written by former SDS members. What were your thoughts about that article and that letter? And yeah.
I mean, I avoid factional fights, period. You know, I vote for Bernie, but I'll do whatever I can to get Trump unelected. And, you know, that's how I feel about that whole thing. That's all I have to say about it. To tell you the truth, I don't want to get into fights.
Yeah.
I think that for me, I understood the intent that what people were trying to say. It is important to remove Trump. It's important to remove this administration. It's critical, in fact, for us that we have to create that buffer again. Even if we don't get a government that we 100% like, we have got to create a buffer quickly before we can't turn it around. On the other hand, the only part of the letter that I didn't feel 100% comfortable with is, and I was actually, you know, I was a Bernie person, and I will vote for whoever the Democrats put up, because unless there's something more viable, that's the alternative that's left for me at this point. But I think it's really important not to we don't need to immerse ourselves into the Democratic Party unless we want to be somebody who works in the Democratic Party to try to change the core of the Democratic Party to a more progressive base, which is, I think, what the people who supported Bernie were doing. They were pushing it to a more progressive base. I think it's a conservative, still a very conservative base that exists in the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. I mean, my parents were Democrats, but I feel like it's important to keep an independent movement.
No. And I think we'll definitely get back to this when we're all talking together as well, because I'm sure that there's more that's there, and we certainly don't want to devolve into factionalism, Candy, but you know, I think that there are some critical issues that are still relevant to talk about, because especially for, I think, the students of today, and I think for everybody, what I'm interested in finding out a little later is, you know, how you moved from that perspective of burying the elections in 1968 to, you know, where you're at today, because it is a big change. And so I think that there's probably some important things to talk about there.
Yeah, just one thing, Kabir, just that wherever we can put people in situations like even Chesa Bodine becoming the district attorney in San Francisco, wherever we can put good people into positions where they can do good things, this is a good thing. It's a good thing, you know, and I think that's important for us to look at, because we were trying, you know, I don't think we saw that back then, but the truth is it's good to have some good people. It's good to have some good people in the Congress.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to move to the folks of today, to the students.
Folks of today.
Questions for Colt and for Patrick and Tayjua. What made you get involved with student organizing and activism?
Their mics are off, Kabir.
Yeah, they just got them back on.
Okay.
Somebody wants to go first.
You do, Patrick.
Okay, yeah, I am really passionate. So, I feel like what really drove me specifically to Black United students, following a KT informational that Bus had, talk about the organization and what they do for the community. I think it was that call and response at the time. It was 2016. A lot was happening politically, and we were at that age where it was directly affecting us. So Black United students did have that immediate response. And I think I just saw how they moved, how they organized themselves. The response the community gave back to them after, you know, just benefiting them as a whole. I think it was that, and that motivation, that, I don't know, that initiative to just give back to a community that I'm a part of and that I want to progress. And I think, yeah, mostly it was that progression that drove me to do bus and then specifically dive into deeper with student activism and student organizing.
I'm gonna hold up, Patrick. Colt, are we still running live?
Yeah, we're still good.
Okay. Just wanted to check because we finish off on Zoom in 40, right? Unless we're
No.
oh, okay, we're good. Okay. All right. Thanks, Patrick. Tayjua, what about you?
So for me, it was the connection with KT as well when I came in. We have a lot of Black student organizations, but BUS was the one that stood out to me the most. And I think it was really because of the connection that they had, because I'm really big on like connecting and like feeling connected to stuff. So they were like really passionate, and my mentor and the other like KT mentors and stuff, they were just like, yeah, bus this, bus that. Like it was the Black student organization. So I was like, okay, well, I want to join that one. So it was really a struggle my freshman year actually joining the organization. But at the end, I connected with Didi and Patrick, and that's how I joined the board. And like learning throughout the school year with Okanta, and he was basically telling me about his time on bus and basically everything that bus does. And that's something I feel really passionate about. So it was like, well, this is a way that I can dive into that and help my community in any way possible. So that's how I got connected with student activism.
You guys want to hit people to what KT is?
Yes, I can give you the whole spiel. Okay, so KT is Computer Transiciones, and it is ran by the Student Multicultural Center. It is basically a freshman and incoming student orientation for students of color. So within KT, you come in, you move in early, they pay for your stay, and you do a whole bunch of cultural affirmations, activities, connecting with your roots. You do a lot of bonding. They separate you in families. You have mentors. It's basically like a family reunion before you meet the family. So it's like
that's good. Yeah,
That's a good way of putting it, Tayjua.
Yeah. So that's it's for 4 years, not 4 years. It's for 4 days straight, 7 in the morning to 12 o'clock at night every day. And you just with everybody bonding, having a good time, listening to music, line dancing. Like if you from a predominantly like white neighborhood, you get connected to your roots. You start to learn more enlightened about your history. You meet different people within the Pan-African Studies building, DEI, the SMC, people of color, like all over campus, whether that's administration to just people who just be walking around like, I got a job for you. So it's really enlightening. And they have discovery zones as well, and they're tailored to different things. Yeah, and then it's a student org fair at the end, and you meet all the Black student organizations.
Cool.
It's just love.
All right, Colt, what about you? How did you get involved in student activism?
Yeah, no, I guess it's interesting. I guess I got radicalized as a high schooler. I had to write a report on Malcolm as it was, and I read his speech, Ballad of the Bullets. And then I just thought, wait a minute, this makes so much sense. You know, why aren't people, talking about this? So that just plunged me into like leftist, writings and things. And I guess for a long time, I just kind of like sat back and like read things, and I was like an armchair like person. But I got in touch with the SDS people, and we made it happen here. So
Okay.
yeah.
That was what you got. That was last year that you started working with National SDS.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Obviously, both of your organizations were heavily active in this period. But do you think that students still look back at this history as a source of inspiration? Do you guys think that the history of BUS is important and the history of SDS is important in terms of where you're at today on campus?
So I can go first. Oh, you want to go?
Go ahead.
No,
Dave.
go.
Okay, so to me, I feel like it is important, the history in a sense, because even now, like when we dive into our history and we go to the archives, or we just listen to our alumni speak on the things that happened back when they were on campus, and we look now, it's literally the same thing. They're parallel. It's in a different light, but it's the same thing that they had going on back when they were here in the 60s and 70s that we have going on now. So seeing that and mirroring it is just like, it's important to look back and see what was going on there and how they handled it and mirror that, so we can get this, in a sense, the same results to resolve our issues.
Or maybe even better results, right? Yeah. Patrick, what do you think?
Yeah, Tayjua definitely hit the nail on the head. It's and I think also it comes along with integrity organization. Ooh, my bad. There we go. Integrity for your organization. And having that extra layer of integrity, extra layer of knowledge on your history, I feel like that definitely adds to the motivation to whatever that you want to drive. I think it's very crucial that you do know your history, you know your roots and where you came from. I know as Black United students, following the tenets of the Black Panther Party and actually educating our community on that too, and being mindful of that education, I feel like that's really crucial. And that only comes with knowing your history, knowing your background, who came before you, and really your roots.
Okay. Colt, what about you?
Yeah, no, I think the history is incredibly important. There's a lot of great lessons there, really. And I think, the big thing is like understanding, what the university is and how the university has always operated. It was, and it still is, a reactionary institution that is, opposed to any kind of progressive change. And I mean, you look at everything that was going on with COINTELPRO, back in the 60s. And, you look at it now the university, is very much against student organizing. They make it very challenging for students to get together.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think a lot of change was won in the 60s. And I think, a lot of what SDS and BUS did through their, confrontational, I think, actions and the education that went on alongside it, really propelled them forward. And I think it's something that we need to learn from.
Okay. Just moving off of that a little bit, Colt, what do you think are some of the biggest issues that students face as organizers today?
Yeah, so I guess for starters, like just engaging with the student body. If you want to have a literature table, or just a table so that people can interact with you, you're basically regulated to the second floor of the student center, which is where there are no students basically ever. Like nobody is just milling around up there. So that's very challenging. If you want to have flyers posted around the campus, you can't actually post them. You have to submit them to whatever building it's in, and then they have to be approved, and then they can be posted. But they can only be posted by these official people. There aren't like enough community billboards to like actually post things on. So it's very hard to get the message out, the physical message out to students. I mean, obviously social media is a thing, but if you want to interact with students on the campus, it's very challenging. The university is not interested in that.
Okay, Patrick, what about for you as president of BUS?
I would say one of the biggest challenges would be, I think it goes with participation and making sure that our students are on the same mutual discipline when we're moving forward with an issue, or for in a demonstration or a protest. We all have that same knowledge and same understanding on what we're fighting for, what we're standing for. I think that poses an issue. And going off of Colts, it's that promotion aspect. It's when we're so constrained in our communication that we really can't get that word out there like how we want to, like how we how in the past it was pretty effective in our communication. But I would say that maybe just grouping our students together and then finding that mutual discipline, because I feel like as soon as we have that same understanding, we can do anything. Honestly, like we can do anything. So I think just getting to that point, that's a pretty big obstacle.
Okay. Tayjua, what about you? Do you have any issues that you think are particularly challenging for students organizing today?
I would say similar to like what Patrick said. Our biggest I know our biggest problem was the involvement. It's just getting involved, because most students, they want to get involved and they want to know how to get involved, and it's just the disconnect. Where to go, who to go to, who to talk to, where to find people. So it's really just the involvement, and then the lack of knowledge. So the lack of knowing where those resources are to be acquainted with, to be involved in.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one more thing I wanted to add. Also, I think with the internet and social media, there has become this thing where people, do internet activism, and like they post things and they share things and they like sign petitions and things. But sometimes it's hard to like filter that out and like actually do things in the actual world,
Right.
actual material things, and there's sort of a disconnect there. Sometimes students get trapped, in the one.
Okay. In terms of the list of demands that you guys recently submitted to the university, could you walk us through those and how they were chosen and why they were chosen?
Yeah, so I guess the demands, we put together this coalition, and we kind of tried to find demands that would resonate with the majority of the student body, and I think we well did that. Obviously May 4 was a big issue. A lot of students were upset that students had essentially been cut out of the discussion on May 4th. That was on people's minds. Obviously Aramark and student workers kind of go hand in hand. Dining services employs the largest number of student workers, and they're just paid terribly. The minimum wage, I think, is $8.25. They're overworked. It's really horrible. The quality of food has gone down, and then there's also just a larger aspect is that Aramark is funding these private prisons. They're running these private prisons, and I just, students don't think that fits with the moral of what a university should be. And then the last demand was protecting students' health and safety. There's just a broad majority of issues here at the university, like the biggest one being student mental health services. Obviously, college is a very stressful time for a lot of people, and we don't have enough counselors to meet the need. People are being put on month-long wait lists to see counselors. And if you really need to speak to somebody, like, what are you supposed to do? It's absolutely horrible. And there's also been just growing white nationalism on campus. Obviously, Caitlin Bennett and that crew have been around. So.
Okay. Patrick, Tayjua, do you guys have anything that you want to add to that?
I would just say I feel like the inclusivity within the coalition and how that's reflecting on the demands, and like Colt said it, the majority of the student body, we made sure that the demands were representative and that they did benefit rather than hinder the majority of students. So I would say, yeah, that inclusivity part. And because before we sat down formally with the coalition, we as Black United students had our personal demands that we wanted to address with the university, because it was really intentional with our 50th Black History Month and things like that. And then as soon as perfect timing with the coalition and bringing together other demands that did pinpoint facets of the university that just not doing their job, that was the best thing at that point. So being inclusive and that we're really transparent in our issues and the demands. So yeah, that's all I want to speak on that one.
All right. Thanks, Patrick. Tayjua, what about you?
Patrick really said most of it, but just to reiterate, like before the coalition was established, we did come up with a list of demands that we had, and we just paralleled the ones that were similar because they both benefited everybody. So it wouldn't be separate issues going on, but a whole collective. So it's more of inclusivity with the student body.
All right. That sort of segues into the next question. How do you feel that the university treats current students?
Oh. Okay. I would say, I'm sorry, my bad. I'm like talking. Is anybody?
No, you're good, Patrick.
Student feel passionate about this one. So I feel like something that has not changed a lot in my 4 years of being here is the transparency with the university. And I love the fact that the demands hit on that. And I think we can't have enough conversations about that and being transparent with the people that you went to a field to, benefit. I think it's that transparency piece that keeps students out the loop. We don't know about resources. We don't know what's happening, our current event. And I feel like that reflects on our academics. That reflects on our mood when we're walking down the Esplanade, because not knowing, what's all happening and not knowing how the system is working, and then still going through the system and then somehow getting hurt along the way, you have so many questions, and it's like what's happening? Who's gonna answer questions for me? So I feel like the university, I think it hits a certain standard for students, and once it hits that standard, that's it. That's really it. And it's more about the dollars at that point and retention.
Colt, Tayjua?
It's really the transparency and the connection too, because some students are in the loop. Like, for instance, USG, and then you have the whole rest of the student body who knows nothing. So it's that connection. And it seems like USG students are more connected to the university than the actual students who aren't within USG, because they know everything, or they know most of what's going on, and they're in contact with administration, and they're getting emails and updates, and we're sitting in the dark, and USG isn't relaying the information, so nobody's relaying the information, so it's just disconnect and lack of transparency.
Okay. Colt?
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think that the university, the university is definitely in it to make money, right? They're not really interested in, being a progressive institution, or, actually caring about their students, or, how students are doing with their degrees and things like that. It's set up to make money, to, just generate this massive, transnational corporations, like Aramark. And yeah, there's just a major issue of transparency going on. Nobody knows what's happening, and I think that's reflective in May 4. You think about Kent State University, May 4 obviously comes to mind, and that's on the students' minds. And the students, would love to be part of this discussion, and they have effectively cut them out. And I think the reasoning behind them cutting out the students is that they want to become this new big research school here in Ohio, and they don't want this lingering controversy to be around it. So they've produced this entity which was going to be not very radical. It was going to be very watered down. It wasn't reflective of the students. It wasn't reflective of the makeup of the student body. So yeah, I don't think the university is actually interested in being progressive or caring about students. They're in it to make money.
Yeah. I mean, the line from the university is students first, right? I mean, and I think part of this. I mean, I have to throw my 2 cents in here. I've kept quiet for long enough. Part of my frustration with this is that concept, right? We say as a university community that we want to put the students first, but when we have the opportunity to do such, we don't take it. For example, even with this event, right? We came to the university and offered this event up as part of their online commemoration activities. You guys have worked really hard over the year, and I'm really proud of what you've done, on top of having to deal with school, having to deal with work, having to deal with a pandemic that shut your classes down, yet you still came up with a program like this. You still came up with a program like you're going to have with Bernadine tomorrow, and they can't honor the fact that you are doing that by promoting it, by saying, I mean, we can't, on the one hand, talk about unity and talk about how the university has come such a long way in terms of dealing with May 4th and dealing with these issues, yet they continually ignore you and try and pretend like these issues haven't been brought up. You brought them up. And, we have a responsibility, right, to recognize what you're bringing up. And I wonder what, Candy and Colin think at this point. Let's try and bring everybody into the conversation. What you guys would think in terms of what the students have brought up and the things that they're dealing with today, and what kind of advice that you might have for them,
Well, Kabir,
just
I'm really shocked that there's that the university is making it hard for SDS and BUS to talk to students.
Are you really shocked though, Candy? I mean,
well, I mean
I want to ask that because historically, right, this is not something that's new.
Right. Am
right?
I being disingenuous? Maybe I am a little bit, but it's shocking. Let's put it that way.
Okay, it is shocking.
One would be shocked.
Okay.
About a university not wanting to facilitate communication. Yeah, just as a university, And I'm just wondering what people can do to get around the rules. Either break them.
Yep.
Just flat out break them.
That's it.
Right? Or find, some independent radio station, or just get somebody else off campus who's willing to be, who the students use. They go to the hairdressers, the barber shops, the food stores. I mean, wherever people can go. Where do students go that they can hang out? I mean, the bars. Can BUS and SDS communicate with people there? I don't know. I mean, that's.
I think you brought up a good point. You brought up a good point with like a space where we have that safe conversation, and that was back in the day the Kumba House, and it's no longer there. And I feel like those type of spaces that they did circulate that type of information. We couldn't meet on a common ground and hold safe conversations. But
the other space, Patrick, was what they used to call the Hub, which is now Oscar Ritchie, and it is still a safe space. At least my office will always be open to you guys.
Thank you.
But and we'll make space for you to do that. But I think the larger challenge is some of what you brought up. You guys have these issues of work, of a lot of challenges in terms of your time. I think that may be a little bit different, but you also have some advantages that Colin and Candy talked about too, which are technology and the ability to do something like this. Have a forum in this type of a venue and come together in this way to organize. Colin, what are your thoughts? Any advice that you might have?
One thing I do want to say is that I think that the people who, Alan and Chick and Tom and other people who've worked so hard over the years to try to get the university to be responsible. And this didn't come by the university just saying, yes, thank you very much. It came through a lot of hard struggle. And that they were able to accomplish everything that they did so that incoming students and people can see that what happened on the campus that day was a horrible thing. And it didn't just happen on Kent's campus. It's happened on a lot of other campuses as well. It happened in Orangeburg, South Carolina. Actually, the year before in People's Park, James Rector was shot by the police. It happened at Jackson State 11 days later. It's going to continue it will actually continue to happen as long as power decides that they need to protect power. So the good things that have been done are really good. The issue about, and I don't want to take that away from anybody, but I think it's really important to see that. I'm just listening to you all. I'm just sitting here going, wow, the university was complicit with repression all the way back then. They invited the House Internal Security Committee to come onto campus while we were there, and they took not us physically, but there's a whole hearing about us.
Summer of 1969.
They couldn't even get my birthday right. They made me older. Well, I guess I had to catch up with Howie and Candy and everybody. But there was a repression that happened back then, and they were trying to stop organizing. They had undercover agents. I still wouldn't be surprised. I still wouldn't be surprised that the police department or some aspect of the security at the campus isn't trying to infiltrate SDS and the Black United students. I'm sure there must be files really deep, and I'm sure you guys probably know your name is everywhere on them. But back then, they spied on us and they lied about us over and over again, and they tried to block us from everything that we did. And one of the things back then, that because there was a war going on, was they tried to get us off of campus. One of the ideas was to expel the people that they could expel so that we would lose our student deferments. And they thought that that would stop us. It didn't, but it's one of the strategies that they had. But that, that you folks are doing such amazing work, and you're not even allowed to set up a literature table. I mean, good.
Well, we can set up a literature table, but it's just that we can't set it up in places where students would.
Right. But that's what I mean. Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, look, I can set up a literature table in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, with nobody passing by, and no one will hear me, and no one will know what I'm doing, and no one will know what I'm saying. That's silencing people. That's repressive.
But what you were saying before, Colin, about action requires action. I mean, yes. we didn't need permission. We didn't ask permission.
Right.
We just did it. And, occasionally people would get arrested, but even that is an action. Even the act of arresting students pisses off other students. And, break the rules, be creative.
Break the rules and be creative. I think those are two pretty good points of advice, right? And okay, let me move into move back to that piece about the elections and sort of that issue of the generations. It's one of the things that's really been interesting to me is, now Colin, Candy, you guys are the generation in many ways that you're the older generation now, and you guys represent in many ways that sort of that generational divide for these kids today. Although I think that in many ways it's different in that, these kids look up to you a lot and they see a lot from your generation.
Some don't.
Well, I think that they do for the most part,
Okay.
Candy.
All right.
At least in the sense that they take from you guys a lot of what you did. And they take it to heart and they adapt it in their lives today. So just in terms of that conversation and voting today, and I'm just wondering how you guys feel as generations and what you want to say to each other about what you want to see in a political world moving forward.
Oh boy. I mean, the whole voting thing is so hard. I get slammed here in Eugene about it all the time. Because the young people here are, just what Colin said, fuck voting, everybody loses. But also what Colin said, it's good. There's two ways to look at it. Good people need to be empowered in our political system, and bad people, evil people who are really just very, very, in a very, very powerful way, propagating all the things that we don't like to see in the world. We've got to stop them. And yes, voting isn't the last thing you do, but maybe it's just the first thing you do. You vote and then you work like hell to make whoever, I mean, if it's Joe Biden, he's not gonna, Joe Biden, he's a conservative guy. But if we organize people to communicate the need for certain action to be taken, Joe Biden has a better chance of equivocating than Donald Trump does. So I go for him.
So one thing I want to say is that if you are looking up to me, I can't tell you how much I look up to you.
Oh.
And I'm serious about this. I have been privileged over the years. And I think it's really amazing to meet in the different aspects of things that I've done, to meet all sorts of people of all sorts of ages, but there's such a passion in young people today. And just listening to the three of you, sorry, Kabir, I'm going to have to put you with us.
That's okay.
But
I feel honored.
just listening to the three of you and the passion and the heartfeltness of everything that you're talking about and what you're willing and trying to do. It's something that I just so deeply respect. And I know you know that there's risk in everything that you're doing. Even if you were to take a step out of even just putting a demand on the university, you know that they're taking a look at you. There's a ding somewhere in your folder. But in terms of voting, if voting wasn't so, why? Okay, the reason that the forces of reaction, the reactionary forces, don't want people to vote is because they don't want people to get in, the good people to get into power, or even that there's a power base that can be a buffer. You don't always get 100% the right person, but that you can create a buffer there. And if they didn't want you, they don't want you to vote. That's why there's this whole argument about voting by mail. There's this whole thing of, oh, we can't do voting by mail.
Yeah.
Well, they did the census by mail, and they did the census online. Everybody seemed to be happy with that. The armed forces has been voting by mail for as long as I can remember. It works, but what they can't do is they can't shut down voting spaces, and that's what they try to do. They try to make up rules how people just back in the Jim Crow days. It still exists. They shut down voting places. They tell people that they're not registered there anymore. They can't find anything. It's if it wasn't so darn important to vote, to just try, and I guess that's what I'm saying. It is important to vote. It's important to go out there and cast your vote. It's important. It's important to make your vote count, and that's something I just want to say. I understand that at this point, that the candidate for the Democratic Party is not what most of the people in this little, of all of us seem to really want. On the other hand, the option of what could go in power again is horrific.
Yeah.
And if you can stop.
Tayjua, Patrick, Colt, what do you guys think?
Yeah, could I hop in on this? I think it's definitely a complicated situation, and I'm still working out what I plan on doing. But yeah, I think we also have to look at voting in this country. I think the majority of working people, I think it's something like 55% of people don't vote already because they realize that the elections are a sham. It's not actually about the people, regardless of who we're going to get. So, I'm not going to tell anybody not to vote. I would never say that. I think people should vote their interest and whatnot. But I don't think that working for a candidate is useful because I think trying to get people who already recognize the system is against them. I think trying to get them to support this system is a regressive kind of action, right? I don't think that working within the Democrats is a way to bring change to this country. I mean, if we look historically, the only reason changes happened is from outside forces. You know, Lincoln was not this great emancipator. It was because of the abolitionist movement, like, you know, John Brown and Matt Turner. And, you know, the same thing with LBJ. He was not a progressive guy, but it was because of the civil rights movement. So I don't think that us organizing within the Democratic Party is frankly useful. And that's where I had a big issue with this letter that these people have written, was that it just gave unequivocal support to Joe Biden. There was no emphasis on the necessity of struggle. Personally, I think it was just a big kind of cop-out in a lot of ways. I mean, the whole New Left movement was a movement of struggle, and, you know, where did it go?
Tayjua, Patrick, I'm wondering what you guys think.
Really, I'm on the same level with Colt in that I'm up in the air right now. I'm definitely going to be voting. My fraternity mandates it, my morals mandate it, but I just think, in just thinking of my own intersectionality and the Black vote and the longevity of that, because continuously, and both Tayjua and I were on what's our news station, the Kent Stater, Kent Wired.
Yeah.
That's on me. Sorry about that. And we were talking about the elections and everything, and we put a lot of emphasis on the Black vote and how most candidates just take advantage of the Black vote. And again, I go back to just meeting that standard and thinking of the longevity of your Black voters and these issues that you're bringing up that are never going to see the light of day if you were to get elected. That's where I have the problem. That's where I'm trying to really cross-reference as much as I can. I'm trying to keep all bias out the window, but really trying to dive deeper into what is my vote going to do? Like, how is this vote going to count, and what is it going to look like in the next years?
Tayjua?
Yeah, so back to the TV2 conversation that we had, we are like taking advantage of when they're out there doing the debates and campaigning and stuff just for the vote, because when they get in office and then we go over and say, okay, these are the things that we need, these are the things that you talked about, it's like we're pushed to the background again, over and over again. So with voting, it's kind of like going with the lesser of both evils, because you know you're not going to get something with one candidate, and you know you're definitely not going to get something with the other.
Right.
So it's just who is going to work in your favor to get whatever you can get as closest to what you need. So it's really just, it's a gamble.
It's a gamble.
Yes. And I think
Well,
there's
either way, you've got to work. You know, either way, you've got to work.
Yeah,
You
you're right.
can't stop doing what you're doing.
And in fact, in certain ways, I think that we have to work even harder. You know, I mean, it's one of the reasons that in supporting Bernie, you know, for the time that I did support him, I think part of the reason that I was so vehement in my support of him was that I recognized that he wasn't going to get elected, but I also recognized, like you and you were saying earlier, Candy, that we have to push, or maybe it was Colin that was saying that we have to push this candidate to that further level of representation of what it is that we hope that we can get. But I feel Tayjua, like I feel that point that, you know, we're not going to get what it is that we want, you know, from either candidate. That's just not going to happen. And so, like Candy's point about working is there. You know, we just have to grind.
Kabir, revolutionaries do not run for president.
That's right.
Period.
That's right.
And it's just a little thing. Voting's easy, do it and move on.
Yeah.
To what you really want.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to try and wrap us up on this level, Colt, so that we can get to any questions and comments from the Facebook group as a whole. You want to lead us through that?
Yeah, so if people just put some questions into the chat, maybe we can try to do that. So let's see what we get.
We haven't gotten any so far?
I think there's been a lot of conversating between people. I don't think there's been many direct questions.
Someone asked earlier, because I'm watching the live too, but someone asked earlier if Bus had any Yeah, does bus have a space of its own? It was like in the comments. So we have a few spaces. One of them is the SMC, the Student Multicultural Center, and the other is Oscar Ritchie. And then intersections. So wherever you fall within those intersections, there are spaces for those Black students as well. But the main two would be the SMC and Oscar Ritchie. It's a lack of disconnect between those two as well, because the SMC doesn't cater to everyone, because it is a small space, really close knit, and a lot of students who go through KT are the main ones who are there in the SMC, and the students who don't really go through KT aren't really like comfortable being in a space with a lot of people that they don't know. Oscar Ritchie, the only disconnect I would say with Oscar Ritchie is that, one, Black students don't really know their history about Oscar Ritchie. They know that the building is for them, and that's a place that they can go, but they don't know their connection to the building. And two, it's on the other end of campus, and our dorms are on a whole other side of campus, so it's the walk there. But other than that, like, those are our predominantly two spaces that we occupy.
Okay, thanks for that, Tayjua.
What's the deal with Dyken?
That was one of the questions.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you guys handle that. That's the question was, what's the deal with Todd Dyken, our president, the president of the university?
I imagine every president of every university is only there for one reason: to get funding. That's what they're about. I mean, like you said, Colt, it's a big corporation. Kent State University it's huge, much bigger than it was when we were there. And it was big then. It's just a big old corporation. That's what it is. You understand the university, you understand megacorps.
So, okay though, Candy, like in terms of it though, right? Like it is a big corporation, but you know, we're 50 years out tomorrow from May 4th. And there is no disconnecting Kent State University from the history of May 4th and from the history of activism. I mean, activism in many ways precedes May 4th on Kent's campus. And so I think, like, how do we sort of negotiate this sort of dual reality of being at once a corporation, but also having a strong sense of social justice and a strong sense of activism, and sort of negotiate those two very strongly competing forces?
One thing that I would really love to say to you is to stop being reasonable.
Yeah.
Stop being reasonable. You know, you're going to talk to Bernadine tomorrow. Bill Ayers wrote a book called Demand the Impossible. Demand what you want. It doesn't matter whether the university can possibly in any way capitulate, you know, just demand what you want and work for that.
I definitely agree. I think that we definitely tried to play nice, you know, the last semester here, which I feel was good in a lot of ways, because it showed that, you know, we were interested in sort of a good faith thing happening. But it's become very apparent, or I mean, I think we knew it going into it, but it's become very clear that they're not interested in any real change. So I do think that the next steps now, I know somebody asked a comment about what the next steps are. We are going to have to be more, you know, confrontational, much more present on the campus. And I think if people want to support, you know, the demands, they're actually posted on Facebook, and I can send that out at the end of this again. But if people want to support the demands, you know, feel free to email the university, call into the university, and express, you know, just your concerns about things. Yeah.
Patrick, Tayjua, what do you have to say?
I feel like with that difference and just juggling those two, we need to foster some type of like collectivist type of system. That type of system where, are you guys able to hear me, by the way? I'm sorry.
A little bit.
I feel like that collectivist type of system, that's something that's really missing just within this university. Being considerate of the actual lives that you're serving
and being intentional in how you're serving them. I feel like that's the real difference. As much as we know that, you know, money plays this huge factor and that's going to be the driving force, we would want them. I mean, it would feel good to me if, you know, my university, in the back of their head, they were thinking about students in a certain way. They were thinking, they held us at a certain high regard that that they actually want us to succeed and want us to keep growing, and they don't see us as dollar signs. But I think it's just separating that collectivism type of mindset to that more business-like, you know, everyone is the same. This is student number one, this is student number two type of thing.
Yeah, we had another really interesting question here that I wanted to get to, I think. They wrote, where do you see Black liberation grassroots in the next 5 years?
I can't.
How about all in all, Tayjua? Because Kent is just a smaller part of the world, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I think
See, it's just the thing with that, to answer the question is very complex within itself, because Black people are very complex. So it's different. People see Black liberation in different ways. So like put it all together and say like all Black people were to see it.
Yeah, it's like I know one thing, we're very it's like reactionary in that, like if it's like a trend, so like in 2016 activism was a trend, like that was really, it was a trendy type of thing, like protesting, demonstrating, everything. And I think, say it again,
Hashtags, retweeting.
Exactly, yeah. And social media played that huge part in, yeah, it just trending. And once that momentum just started to go down, we lost that participation. But I feel like it's in looking back, like what sparked that motivation, like what sparked, you know, that community uprising, that we all came together like that. I definitely, in the next 5 years, in my optimistic view, I think that we'll be more closer to our roots, and then in understanding our roots, we'll be able to progress in different ways than we've ever seen, like, possible. I think just being more open-minded with this general thing, and just accepting our history and playing on that, I feel like we'll be at a good place. I feel like we're closer connection to it, but it's complex, like they just said.
And also, like, with that spark that happened in 2016, well, that started with Trayvon Martin, that spark that just kept growing. It was also like, it wasn't even just police brutality that was being addressed. You seen different communities and different intersects of Black people speaking on their grievances that they had with the country and in the communities that they were in, outside of just being brutalized by the police. So that's another like reason with the complexity of it, because it's not always just one thing. It's that one thing that sparks it, and then you have everything else that just goes off around it. So, but yeah, with Patrick's, like, to agree with Patrick, I would say we'll be more connected to our roots, because that's another thing that's really sparking within the Black community. Just connecting to our roots, embracing ourselves, understanding that we are beautiful. Like, you see models now who are more Black, they wear their hair out, it's afros, like, it's not just the mixed Black girl, the light-skinned Black girl, or it's just standard European white women. It's a collective of people, and that's because we're connecting to our roots and we're embracing our beauty, and we're telling people like we are here. So I believe that we'll be more connected as well.
White folks, my white brothers and sisters, how do you think that you contribute to this discussion and this struggle as well?
Are you talking about the struggle for Black liberation?
Black
For Black
liberation.
Yep.
I mean, the Panthers always made it really clear to us. I mean, we were, like we've said, we were young and we didn't know what we were doing. And the Panthers made it really clear to us that our job was to support, not lead. And I think that's true. And we're still in that position of, we take the lead from you guys. You tell us what to do, and we'll support you. And we will. Trust us. I mean, to whatever extent you can, trust that we will support you.
And I agree. I feel that for us, or for me, I need to make sure that wherever I see racism rears ugly head, which unfortunately is way too many places, I need to speak out about it, talk about it, and raise the issues about the fact that there's an injustice that's happening to people of color, to not just Black people, but to all people of color. But for Black people, there's an injustice that's happening, and we as white people need to stand side by side, demanding that Black people can have a full and incredible life with everything that they need, and whatever it is that they want. And that's so important for us.
Colt, what about you? What do you think in terms of being on the younger end of the spectrum? How do you see the support for the Black liberation struggle?
Yeah, you little whippersnapper.
Yeah, whippersnapper.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of hope. I agree with everything that's been said, but I think there is a lot of hope. I think people are realizing that we have to work together. There was an excellent doc that came out recently about the original Rainbow Coalition, and I think that is something that's very present on people's minds. And I think that more and more young people are realizing, the reality of what America is, and that it's this settler colonial country that is oppressing all these other people. And I think we're realizing, what whiteness is. That's this very oppressive, construct. So I think there's a lot of hope for the Black liberation movement. And, I think that, us on the other side of it, we have to do everything we can to support it and advance it. But I mean, obviously, we can't be the ones directing it. Our role is supporting it and helping it develop.
But I think, that sometimes I have to say, like, the support line can be a little bit of a cop-out. And I'm just going to put it out there in that way. I mean, yeah, you definitely need to support the self-determination of Black people, but there's a lot that white people can do within their own community.
Oh, yeah.
To speak out actively. And I think one of the things, my 2 cents in this question and this discussion is that white people need to be a lot more active in terms of issues around race and confrontational in terms of their own communities, and challenging their own communities in terms of the active oppression that goes on. Call it out. When you see something that is foul and effed up, call that shit out and make sure that you challenge it and that you don't let it go and that you confront it at every point. I see us far too often in this world and in this struggle sitting back, like Candy said, there's no don't compromise. And we see a lot of racism around us that we don't challenge, that we don't confront, that we don't deal with on a regular basis. And I think that we need to do that much more often.
Especially in the classroom.
Amen.
Especially where?
In the classroom.
Oh, in the classroom. Oh, wow. Cool.
And I think, one of the things that I think is great about what's been happening since BUS and SDS originally came together is we do have the Department of Pan-African Studies on Kent's Yard, and we do have the ability to discuss some of these issues in a way that we didn't have 50 years ago because of the hard work of students from SDS and Black United students. But we need to carry that further. And like Tayjua was saying, we have a responsibility both among Black students and white students today to take these classes, to support this department, to engage in these critical discussions so that we can move this discussion forward in a progressive and in a proactive way.
I agree. And there's sort of a question that sort of ties into this, I think, in some way. But somebody asked, how is the economic and health crisis going to change the university?
Well, again, I mean, I'm going to chime in here. I think it's going to have a major effect. And like Colin was saying earlier, I think we see it, unfortunately, in many ways, with our students of color first and foremost. I've already experienced students that have said, I'm just not coming back. I can't afford it. It's too difficult now. Black folks are the first ones hit in any depression, and they're hit twice as hard. And unfortunately, that impacts departments like the Department of Pan-African Studies. It impacts programs like Cupida Tradiciones, and it impacts those communities disproportionately, just like the pandemic has impacted the Black community disproportionately. And so we have a responsibility again to confront and to challenge those structures that allow these inequities to continue. So I feel like we really have to, do our best to support communities of color, both the Black community and the Latino community, the Asian community, especially in terms of moving forward and doing some of this, because they're economically, getting hit disproportionately, and from a healthcare perspective as well. And I think part of like your 4 goals, it's amazing to me how prescient those goals were, because that goal number 4 in terms of better healthcare access for you guys as students is so critical now. These things are really important, and I think that we've seen some of the cracks in that foundation when students' mental health care needs have gotten really hit through this pandemic, and we have a responsibility to meet those demands.
Yeah, and just speaking on the numbers, I think this is important to note that the university has released their fiscal budget for the next semester, and they're cutting about $110 million, which is massive. Which I would like to see, why the number has grown so much, because I know the state has we lost like 32 million from the state, but now we're cutting 110 million, which to me seems like a oddly large leap in things. And obviously the administrators, officials are taking pay cuts, but that's not going to cover everything. I'd like to see where these cuts are going, because I have a suspicion that it's going to come right at DPS, which is not, appropriate.
Yeah, departments will be cut. They'll cut out departments that, despite their, it's just a matter of dollars and cents. Where the students aren't going to class, they're going to.
And the dollars and cents, Candy, too, are disproportionate. I mean, it's great that the administrators are taking a 12% cut in salary. But, like I was telling my wife, when you make $450,000 as a salary, taking a 12% cut is a little different than if you're making $40,000 a year and you take a 12% cut. So those cuts are disproportionate again, and I think that we have a responsibility to look at the structure of the university as well. Over the past couple of years, we passed the threshold of having more administrators than faculty on this campus. And that says something about what our priorities are in terms of delivering services to students. And
absolutely,
I think it's something that we need to question.
That's the other thing. The university is continually expanding. They're growing. I know Beverly Warren gave this speech at Chautauqua, and she talked about how she wanted, Kent State to become this new big research school, essentially. But it's like, how do they rationalize this expansion of the university without meeting the needs of its, already present students? It's just nonsensical to me.
I think you bring up a good point where all these administrations have these initiatives and programs, but none of them are reaching their goals. Or because I've been on search committees, and like as president, I've been on search committees like little initiatives and things like that. And at the beginning of the meeting, it's like, okay, this is a continuation of our past program, this program. that didn't get finished by so-and-so, and then we're going to try to do this. And then another person is doing another program that's parallel to that program, but it's a different name and a different department, and they're getting a different award. And it's like, oh no, I do want to mention this. I don't want to name any names though. And I think it just speaks on the ego. They just inflating the egos of administration at that point. One of our administration received an award that was named after them. And it was very confusing to bus as a collective because we know, hold on, we know that that person, she wanted, I didn't even say she, they wanted to disband a cultural initiative within our initiatives that, you know, benefited incoming Native American, Latino, and Black students. So out of all of this, that passed, you know, I don't think we should have this program. Let's cut the funding on that. Let's put this funding to somewhere else. It all resulted in them receiving an award, a diversity named after them. And yeah, that just blew me back. I think it's just the fact that it's not about students anymore. It's like, okay, how much money can I make out of it? Okay, how much credibility can I gain while doing this? Okay, I got you. Okay, I'm gonna do it now. Not for the students, but I got you for the dollar bills type of thing.
And to touch on what Patrick said, just like our diversity, equity, and inclusion department, it's like, where is it? They have all these initiatives, all these branches, all these resources, money, funding, and we don't see it. We don't even see them. So it's like, what are you here for? And then they receive awards and they're getting recognition for things that we don't even see. So who was benefiting from these initiatives and these programs and these departments that you're instilling in the university that we're paying money for?
Exactly.
Right.
But
I shouldn't be president. I shouldn't be president. I shouldn't be part of BUS to see the faces of DEI or to see the people that are supposed to be directly benefiting me. I don't need to hold any type of position. I just need to be a student that can state. And that should be enough. But it's not enough.
That's right. You guys are bringing up some really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do we just want to maybe do some final thoughts, perhaps? Kabir, I think you're muted.
Sounds good. That sounds good. Anybody have any things that they want to share on the end? I will say it was a real honor to be able to sit down with all of you today and just hear your brilliant thoughts and amazing experiences for all of you.
Great. Yeah.
No, thank you guys. I know Tayjua spoke on it before with hearing alumni and everything, but it does add that layer of integrity and just like, I don't know, insight into the past. And it's really beneficial. I really enjoyed it, so thank you.
I did too. Thanks a lot, Patrick.
Yeah, I think I'm actually overwhelmed with just everything that's been said and amazed. And look, is that Kabir being attacked there? But just I'm overwhelmed, and it also brings me a real feeling of joy to hear the conscious level of what's going on. And I hope that people who listened learn something, because I know I learned an awful lot today. And once again, my whole tenure at Kent State University lasted from September to April. And look what effect it had on me. The effect that I'm still here talking about everything that I was talking about all those years ago.
And we're glad, Colin.
Thank you. Thank you. Me too.
What about our other folks?
I would like to say thank you for having me. This was very insightful. Like, I like hearing about the history and seeing how everything is really parallel today and how things haven't really like changed and how things did change. So that was something I really benefited from being on this panel and just meeting everyone, you know.
Well, Tayjua, we look forward to to what you're going to do next year as well.
And also, I just want to say, if there's anything that we can do, if you want us to edit your 4 demands, if you want us to think through with you in terms of a problem, or to network to somebody else besides just me and Colin who could help with a problem, let's keep it up. I mean, there's no reason why we can't keep talking to each other.
Absolutely, yeah. That's something I wanted to stress here at the end. You know, if we want to see actual change, we have to build, you know, this multiracial, you know, coalition. It has to be multi-generational. It has to be, you know, it just has to be inclusive if we want to see actual change. So, you know, I would love for dialogue to continue. And yeah, no, I think we're ready to fight back.
Awesome.
And I just want to, for me, I just want to say, in loving memory of the students that were killed at Kent and at Jackson State, and all the people who've been murdered by the military forces. You're in our hearts. We remember you, and we are definitely trying to build a better world where this will never happen again.
All power to all people.